Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Sabneet Kaur from Institute of Liver and Biliary Sciences, where I have recently joined. Today we are going to talk about the module Antibody Therapy under the paper Molecular Therapeutics. After completing this module, you will be able to understand what are monoclonal antibodies, how are they produced by hybridoma technology, what are the recent advancements in antibody engineering? You learn about chimeric and humanized antibodies. Then you learn how to produce fully human antibody libraries. Then you'll also come to know about the mechanism of therapeutic antibodies and their role in cancer therapy and the recent developments in antibody therapeutics. Now first coming to antibody structure and function. Antibodies are Y-shaped molecules which are composed of two identical heavy chains and two identical light chains. Both these chains are composed of variable, which is also called as the antigen binding region, and the constant or the crystallizable regions. The constant or the crystallizable and the antigen binding regions, they are linked by a hinge region which gives flexibility to this Y-shaped molecule. The variable region of the antibody is further subdivided into hypervariable or complementarity determining regions, better called as CDRs, and framework regions. Antibodies have important therapeutic uses beyond fighting infections in the body. It was Kohler and Milston in 1975 who developed a procedure to efficiently produce monoclonal antibodies. These monoclonal antibodies are an important advancement in clinical research. Monoclonal antibody is an antibody that is directed against a specific antigen determinant, which is also called as an epitope. Now, the production of monoclonal antibodies was first given in 1975 by Kohler and Milstein. And for their generation, we first inject a mouse with a specific antigen to stimulate its immune system so that it can produce antibodies. Then we extract the mouse spleen cells, which usually contains the B lymphocytes, which will produce antibodies, and then we culture them in the lab. On the other hand, we extract some mouse tumor cells. You all know tumor cells can grow continuously in the culture. And then as a next step, we fuse these two cells, the B cells which are producing specific antibodies against some specific antigens, and the tumor cells which are growing continuously. This fusion takes place by adding polyethylene glycol, and the resulting cells which we get are a hybrid cell which are called as hybridoma cells. Now we grow these cells under conditions so that only the hybridoma cells survive. This is called as the selection medium for the hybridoma cells. Then we extract the hybridoma cells after selection, culture them separately, and then take out the specific antibody of our interest. The monoclonal antibodies can be expanded either in culture, in vitro, in animals, in vivo. Now, there's a special selection medium for the hybridomas. This is called as the HAT medium. The selection of hybridoma cells is based on inhibiting the DNA nucleotide synthesizing machinery. The mammalian cells can synthesize DNA by two pathways. One is called as the de novo synthesis pathway and the other is called as the salvage pathway. The de novo synthesis of nucleotides or DNA, it requires tetrahydrofolate, and this de novo synthesis pathway can be blocked by the inhibitor aminoterrin. Whereas the salvage pathway, it involves direct conversion of purines and pyrimidines into the corresponding nucleotides, and we need two key enzymes for this: hypoxanthine guanine phosphoribosyl transferase HGPRT, which is responsible for the salvage of the purines. It converts hypoxanthine and guanine to IMP and GMP. And the other enzyme is the thymidine kinase, which is involved in the salvage pathway of pyrimidines, and it converts thymidine to TMP, which is thymidine monophosphate. So any of the mutations in these enzymes will block the salvage pathway. So for selection of hybridomas, we take myeloma cells or the cancer cells which are HGPRT negative. So the salvage pathway cannot take place in these cells, so they cannot survive alone in the HAT medium. Then the B cells also cannot survive because of the inhibition of the de novo synthesis of purine nucleotides, because in the HAT medium we add aminoterrin. And so the hybridoma cells, that is, which are fused cells, only these cells possess the ability of the myeloma cells to grow with a functional HGPRT which they obtain from the lymphocytes. So only the hybridoma cells can proliferate in the HAT medium, and this procedure is successfully used for their selection. Now the hybridoma cells possess indefinite growth and multiplying properties of the myeloma cells, along with secretion of antibody of B lymphocytes. The first therapeutic antibody, which was a mouse antibody produced by hybridoma technology, was launched in 1986, and this was used as an immunosuppressive agent during organ transplantation. But the limitations of hybridoma technology are many, especially when we have to use antibodies for therapeutic purposes. The production of monoclonal antibodies in vitro is very low. We get only 5 to 10 micrograms of the antibody. We can increase the yield by growing them in ascites fluid in the peritoneal cavity of mouse, where we can get yields of about 5 to 20 milligrams of monoclonal antibody. But the monoclonal antibodies which are produced in mouse, they are suitable only for in vitro uses and not for therapeutic uses in humans. For ethical reasons, humans cannot be immunized against antigens, so we cannot get human antibodies. The fused human lymphocyte mouse myeloma cells are also very unstable. Then there is no suitable myeloma cells in humans that can replace mouse myeloma cells. And further, the technique which involves human cell is quite cumbersome, time consuming and expensive. So for all these reasons given, it's very difficult to produce human monoclonal antibodies for therapeutic purposes by using hybridoma technologies. So we have to devise other strategies for the same. Developments in molecular biology and recombinant DNA technology made it possible in the early 19s to clone the genes of the antibody molecules. Now, cloning of the antibody genes by genetic engineering was the first step towards the modification of antibodies. This ushered in the age of antibody engineering. Through antibody engineering, we could produce chimeric as well as humanized versions of monoclonal antibodies. Chimeric antibodies were produced by cloning and then fusing of the murine or the mouse variable domains responsible for the binding activity with human constant domains. So chimeric antibodies were 70% human. They possess a fully human Fc region, which makes them very less immunogenic in humans in comparison to the murine monoclonals, and also allows them to interact with human effector cells and the complement cascade. Further, the murine part of the monoclonal antibody was reduced to the hypervariable loops of the fully human antibody with the hypervariable loops of the murine antibody of interest. That means we replaced the human framework regions, or we fused the human framework regions with the murine CDRs. And this was done by using an approach called as the complementarity determining region grafting, or also better called as CDR grafting. So these antibodies, they were called as fully humanized antibodies as they were 85 to 90% human, and since they were more closely resembling the human antibodies, they were even less immunogenic than the chimeric ones. Now, with the ever increasing power of antibody engineering, it became possible to clone the entire repertoire of antibody fragment genes from both immunized or non-immunized animals, which also included humans. Now, several approaches have been developed to produce combinatorial libraries for the production of human monoclonal antibodies for specific antigens. Now these libraries, they are based on display technology, and the display technology was originally described by Smith et al. In 1987. In this technology, we display peptides through their incorporation as fusion proteins into the sequence of phage gene 3 protein. So along with the phage protein, the peptides are also displayed outside these phages. The phage display technology, it has emerged as a powerful technology for selection of protein domains with defined binding specificity. It was in 1990 that McCree and colleagues employed the phage technology for the expression and selection of antibody fragments, and it was the birth of phage antibody libraries. Today we have a multitude of antibody libraries which differ in their design and the means of construction. Coming to human antibody display libraries, to isolate and generate completely human antibodies from such combinatorial libraries, the antibodies or the antibody fragments, they are displayed on the surface of cells, phages, ribosomes, or even within the cells. So based on the method of display, three types of antibody display libraries are available. We have phage display library, ribosome display library, and yeast display antibody library. Now, based on the source of the library sequences, we have four types of antibody libraries. We have naive libraries. These libraries are amplified from a natural source, such as we use the DNA from primary B cells. Since they are naive, so the B cells are usually from non-immunized donors. Then we have immune libraries, which are generated from the B cell, which is derived from antibody genes of the immunized donors, human donors. Then we have synthetic libraries, which are completely based on computational in silico design and gene synthesis. That means we design the gene synthesis based on in silico techniques, and then we put it inside the phages or the display. Then we have semi-synthetic libraries, which combine both, which is antibody fragments from the natural sources as well as in silico design of some of the defined parts. Now the phage display libraries. To construct a phage display library, we first take mRNA from the B cells, which may be naive or which may be immune. This B cells mRNA undergoes mRNA extracted from the B cells undergoes PCR with reverse transcriptase so that we can form cDNA library. The cDNA is then amplified, it is cloned into bacteriophages so that each phage now contains immunoglobulin gene. So the phage vector system consists of the entire phage genome with the antibody gene or the fragment which is inserted as a fusion to the phage surface proteins. So the whole process lies in linking of the immunoglobulin gene or the fragment with the phage surface gene. Each phage has the antibody protein, it codes expressed on the outside of the protein code. To isolate a gene in a phage display library, these bacteriophages are exposed to an environment where the targeted antigens are bound to a surface, a cell or a particle. Then the phages displaying the correct antibody, they will bind to this antigens. The phages will display the antibody because the antibody will be expressed along with the phage coat protein outside. So the phages which display these antibodies correctly, they will bind to the antigens and the rest of the library can be easily removed. So this involves the in vitro selection and screening of the antibodies. So after a few more rounds of panning, we will narrow down the antibody completely and the final candidate is then selected by ELISA or enzyme linked immunosorbent assays. Then besides the phage display libraries, we have ribosome display libraries. Ribosome display is an evolution and selection system of libraries which takes place completely in vitro. In this kind of library, the antibody sequence is transcribed and translated in vitro. So the antibody which is protrudes out of the ribosome and it becomes a part of the complex of the mRNA, ribosome and protein. So this antibody which is protruded out, it can now bind to a surface bound ligand just like we did in the phage display library. So the complexes, the antibody antigen complexes that bind well, they are immobilized, and then after subsequent rounds of elution and dissociation, the corresponding mRNA can be reverse transcribed back into cDNA. For the antibody can be separated, and then for identification it can be transcribed back into cDNA for identification. Now repetition of this process with greater selective pressure, it can be used to isolate even better binders, that is called as affinity maturation of these antibodies. So additional factors which are present in eukaryotic ribosome display, they can enhance protein translation and folding, a variety of post-translational modification which is better than the phage display method or prokaryotic counterparts. Combinatorial antibody libraries of different sizes and different specificities have been established, and these are a very good alternative to conventional hybridoma technology or immunization. The in vitro selection methods which are used in display libraries, they allow very rapid and efficient selection of a fully human antibody or a fully human antibody fragment against virtually any antigen. The affinity maturation of monoclonal antibody against a particular antigen is increased in vitro by creating a secondary library consisting of mutants of the first candidate and performing stringent in vitro selection against the antigen of choice. So in this way, the affinity maturation in these in vitro selection methods is done. Phage display and more recently even ribosome display, they have been used to obtain antibodies with very high affinities for the relevant antigen. Till date, there are more than 25 therapeutic antibodies which are derived from these display libraries, and they have been approved for clinical use or they are in various stages of clinical trials. Various antibody formats like the single chain Fab fragments, the single domain antibodies, they are used and they can be displayed and selected against a particular antigen. Besides the phage display libraries, we have transgenic humanized mouse models for creating human antibodies. These transgenic humanized mouse have been created by replacing the entire mouse IgG gene repertoire with a human gene repertoire. So when the whole gene repertoire mice repertoire is replaced with human gene, then upon immunization, these humanized mice will produce only human antibodies, and by using conventional hybridoma techniques, we can easily get completely humanized antibodies. So this approach has the advantage of yielding in vivo matured antibodies, which circumvents the need for additional affinity maturation which we require in the in vitro methods like phage display. And also by using transgenic humanized mouse technology, we can get a full length immunoglobulin or antibody, which is often our preferred format for therapy. In display technologies, we usually use the antibody fragments. However, humanized mouse, they cannot be used effectively when the immunogen is toxic or when the targeted antigen shares a high degree of homology with its murine orthologs. Now coming to the mechanism of action of these therapeutic antibodies, these antibodies deploy various mechanisms. The first thing, neutralization. These therapeutic antibodies, they bind to the ligand or the receptor that is expressed on the cell surface and they block the target signaling pathway. So this can result either in the cellular activity being diminished, the proliferation of the cell being inhibited, the activation of pro-apoptotic programs, or even the cells being resensitized to cytotoxic agents. The next mechanism is antibody-dependent cell-mediated cytotoxicity, or better called as ADCC. To trigger ADCC, the variable fragment or the variable domain of an antibody, this binds to a specific antigen which is expressed on the surface of the target or the tumor cell. The antibody is then able to recruit immune effector cells, such as you have macrophages, you have natural killer cells or NK cells, which express various receptors, and these cells are able to bind to the Fc region of the antibody, and so the antibodies activate the immune effector cells to lyse the tumor cell or the target cell. The antibodies can also act by the complement dependent cytotoxicity, or the CDC mechanism. The CDC is triggered when the complement protein C1 protein complex, it binds the antigen antibody complex and activates a cascade of complement proteins which causes the formation of further complex that attacks the membrane and resulting in lysis of the tumor cell or the target cell. The use of monoclonal antibodies for cancer treatment is very promising. Adalimumab was the first human monoclonal antibody which was approved by the US FDA for therapy. After this, many monoclonal antibodies are now being used for cancer treatment, like rituximab, which is a chimeric murine human monoclonal antibody, and this is targeted against the B cell marker CD20. The rituximab binds to the tumor B cell which expresses CD20. It induces cell death through CDC or ADCC, and the rituximab is indicated for treatment of patients with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, chronic lymphocytic leukemia and rheumatoid arthritis. Then we have bevacizumab, a recombinant human monoclonal antibody which binds to the vascular endothelial growth factor, and this inhibits its activity to bind to its receptors. The vascular endothelial growth factor binds to its receptor like VEGFR1, VEGFR2, but when it is bound to the monoclonal antibody, it cannot bind to its receptor, so it blocks the signaling pathway which is induced by vascular endothelial growth factor. Now this antibody is used to treat metastatic colorectal cancer and breast cancer. Then we have cetuximab, which is again a human mouse chimeric anti-EGFR, which is epidermal growth factor receptor monoclonal antibody. Cetuximab, it binds to EGFR selectively, it blocks EGFR from uniting with its ligand, which is epidermal growth factor. So it also blocks the signal transduction of epidermal growth factor. So cetuximab is approved for colorectal cancer and head and neck, the squamous cell carcinoma of the head and neck. We have various human monoclonal antibodies, both chimeric and humanized, that have received FDA approval. Now another format of using therapeutic antibodies is drug targeting monoclonal antibodies. The monoclonal antibodies which we have discussed, they suffer two major limitations for cancer therapy. The first is the identification of the perfect molecular target, and second is their clinical efficacy as a single therapeutic agent. So for overcoming these limitations, monoclonal antibodies are now linked to drugs as antibody-drug conjugates. The basic concept in designing an antibody-drug conjugate is to combine the precision of the antibody so that it can directly bind to the tumor cell with the power of the cytotoxicity which is associated with the drug. So the linked antibody can significantly decrease non-specific uptake of the drug, which is one of the major limitations of the monoclonal antibody. And the another limitation, it will increase the specific uptake of the conjugate by the tumor cells. So the antibody drug conjugates are prodrugs requiring drug reliefs for activation. So After internalization of the monoclonal antibody into the target cells, the drug complex should be biodegradable and non-immunogenic so that it doesn't trigger any immune response upon treatment. So most of the antibody drug complexes, they are currently now are used in clinical trials for the treatment of different types of cancer, because they are much more better, they are much more specific than monoclonal antibodies alone. There have been many new developments, there have been many new promising studies in the monoclonal antibody generation. We have some development of monoclonal antibodies which target viruses. Monoclonal antibodies are also being used for the radioimmunodetection of tumors. Then we have generated biospecific antibodies which can combine the specificities of two antibodies. So they can simultaneously bind and address two different antigens or epitopes. Besides the engineering of the variable region of the antibody, there have been developments in engineering the Fc region of the antibody. Now the Fc region is being optimized so that we can increase the half-life of the antibody through stronger binding to Fc receptors. We can increase the toxicity of the antibody by increasing the binding to the Fc receptors. By increasing the stability and half-life, the efficacy of the antibody, we can decrease the dose which is required for the treatment or the therapy. We can decrease the dose of the therapeutic antibody which is required for treatment. Also, strategies to enhance the stability of the therapeutic antibodies during their manufacturing, packaging, transportation, they are all being developed. So by the end of this lecture, let's now summarize what we have learnt in this module. Therapeutic monoclonal antibodies have been in use since 1986 after the first production protocol being developed by Kohler and Milston in 1975. These monoclonal antibodies are very well selected by using the HAT medium, but having limitations for antibody therapy, the cloning of antibody genes and antibody fragment genes have led to the development of chimeric and humanized antibody, which has ushered in the era of antibody engineering. Various antibody libraries have been produced which are based on display methods like phage display and ribosome display. Humanized antibodies have been generated by using transgenic humanized technology, which is a great step towards human antibody therapeutics. Most monoclonal antibodies which are in current use, they target soluble and membrane proteins, glycoproteins, glycolipids, carbohydrates which are present on diseased or tumor cells. Mechanistically, these therapeutic antibodies can neutralize or kill their targets by activating ADCC or CDC. And as of today, there are more than 294 monoclonal antibodies which are approved or investigational drugs in the clinic, which consist of 36 chimeric and about 258 humanized monoclonal antibodies. And now efforts are being directed towards increasing the monoclonal antibody diversity, affinity and stability by engineering the variable regions, by engineering the constant regions to avoid potential issues of immunogenicity and in vivo degradation. Thank you.